Ooh. Don't I look good in my new clothes? New image. It's judgment time. Fashion style. Now I need to try and stop this becoming a really long video, because all the time on YouTube I see people put up the list of their favourite games of all time. And for me, I can do that. I can make a long list of my favourite games of all time, but it would be too long, you know, I just don't want to do that. I've made a list of the top 40, plus a few bonus ones, games of all time, for me, that I love on vintage consoles. I left out modern consoles because there's so many of them now, they're like a dime a dozen, so I really just wanted to talk about vintage games on vintage consoles. Now this is a very subjective list. It is biased, it is my list, it is my opinion, so you may not agree with everything on my list. You might put it in a different order, and that's okay if you believe that. If you would have put it differently, comment below. Let me know. What would you like to be top? What would you like to be bottom? Let me know. So like I said, there's 40 of them, and I'm going to start right now. First of all, let's begin with the NES and the SNES. These were my first consoles that I played when I was a kid. When I was like 5 years old, this is what began my career as a professional gamer. And we're going to start officially with Super Mario Brothers. That game was the best. It was a simple side-scroller, you know, before side-scrollers became really complex. All you did was you moved from point A to point B, jumping up and hitting little boxes with your head in the process. Jumping on top of mushrooms and making them go flat. Man, it was awesome. And what did you have to do? You had to get to the end and save the princess. It was very simple, really. So I love Super Mario Brothers, one of the greatest games of all time. Arguably the greatest game of all time. Second, we have Tetris. Every geek that's ever lived would be lying to you if he said that he doesn't love Tetris. Tetris is fun, it's problem solving, you have to use your mind to get through the puzzles, and the longer you play and the harder it gets, the more your heart rate starts to go faster and faster and faster. So yeah, Tetris, great game, love the colours, love the music, developed by a Russian guy in the Cold War. I love that type of story. Now at this rate, I'm going to be here forever, so I need to start speeding things up. Next game, Bubble Bobble. Love Bubble Bobble once again. Great game, great visual effects. It was colourful, it was entertaining, loved it. Next game on the Super Nintendo system, Chrono Trigger. Now I don't need to go into details with this one. Anyone who's anyone knows Chrono Trigger. Great game, time travelling implements. The way you play the game and the choices that you make affect the story later on in the game. So if you kill this person now, later on they won't be there, but if you don't kill them now, later on they'll be there to really piss you off. And that was done in 8-bit glory on the Super Nintendo, and that was amazing. Alright, next console, Sega Mega Drive. Now Sega released lots of consoles over the years, but for me, the one that got me really into gaming was the Sega Mega Drive. My brother and I, we got it on Christmas, and I remember opening the box and like sniffing it, you know that smell, it's like, smells so good. The game we got with the Sega Mega Drive was Alex the Kid. Once again, side platformer, where you got Alex and you're running around, sort of like Mario Brothers, but they changed just enough things to make it interesting. So Alex the Kid, great game. Next one, 20th Century Fox brings us Alien 3. Not the best movie in the franchise, but what a great game. If you compare it to the more modern Alien games, that's right, you know what I'm talking about. Ugh. Granted, Alien Isolation is a good game, but I'm talking about Alien 3 back in the early 90s. It was fun, it followed the story, it was arguably better than the movie. Next game on the Sega Mega Drive, Back to the Future 3. The Back to the Future movies are arguably one of the greatest franchises of all time. It's got a great protagonist, a great antagonist, a great doctor, and an amazing car that travels through time. Not to mention it's got a great soundtrack. The power of love is a curious thing. Makes one man weep, makes another man sing. But the game followed the movie, and it followed the movie really well. It was in the Wild West, and you played as Marty, and you went through with Doc Brown, trying to get back to the 1980s. Next game, not much to say about this one. Batman, great game. Playing as the Cape Crusader is always great, even when it's in the early 90s. Then we've got Sonic the Hedgehog. That game was so fast-paced, collecting all those O-rings. It was a great game in a great time, and a pioneering game for the gaming industry. Alright, next console, PlayStation 1. It's time for me to now reveal my favourite game of all time, and that is Metal Gear Solid. You know I'm a big Metal Gear Solid fan, and I've loved it since day one. And why do I love it? That's because of Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation 1. The story to that game is so convoluted for its time. It is 5-star, it is amazing, it's why I play games. Next we have Crash Team Racing / Crash Bandicoot. Both different games, but both great games by a great studio, and I cannot wait for the new Crash Bandicoot to come out. Next, Resident Evil. Resident Evil on the PlayStation 1 was one of those games that when I was a kid, I would play it, but I'd be really scared. You know, you play it and say, oh, I'm old enough to play games, but you really get nightmares when you play it. When I played it recently, I look back on it, and the sound effects in that game are hilarious. You know, you shoot a zombie, they'd be like, ooh, ooh, ooh. Sounds sort of like they're getting off or something, you know, but it's still really funny. But nevertheless, a great game. Then we have Spyro the Dragon. Not much to say about that one. Another great exploration game. Tomb Raider. This introduced us to Lara Croft, a fantasy that geeks like me continue to have every single day. Driver 2. Now this sort of introduced me to driving games. Up until Driver 2 I hadn't really played around with them much. But the driving in the game was fun. It felt real, even though I'd never driven a car before. It felt fun, it felt like you could explore this city. In my opinion, Driver paved the way for other games such as Grand Theft Auto. And now I'm going to tell you all the secret that not many people know about me. Abe's Odyssey. A great game, but for some reason, this game gave me nightmares for weeks. The opening cutscene to the game, it was all CGI and 3D. For some reason, it would scare the living shit out of me. Tekken 2, great fighting game. When it comes to fighting games, you got Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, and Tekken. In my opinion, they're the ones that are the best of all time. Grand Theft Auto, the original top-down Grand Theft Auto game where you play as the little tiny sprite and you shoot the bullets that look like pearls. Still a great game, still fun to play today. Mortal Kombat. The Mortal Kombat franchise has lasted throughout time, and it will continue to last throughout time. It was a great game back then, it's a great game now. Now wrestling games are sort of an acquired taste, but WCW Mayhem, back on the PlayStation 1, that got me through so many days off school. I loved that game. Alrighty, we're up to the PlayStation 2. This list is starting to drag out, but that's alright. Bear with me. Grand Theft Auto 3, the first third-person open-world sandbox game that I had ever played. And I still remember it as a great game, and I still play it every now and then. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas / Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Now I know these are two different games, but they're both very similar, and they're both really good games. Really violent games. I was probably underage to play them at the time, but still I loved them. Moving on, Metal Gear Solid 2 / Metal Gear Solid 3. Once again, two different games, but the story connects with both of them, and it takes you back to the original on the PlayStation 1. I just cannot say enough good things about Metal Gear Solid, and I can sit here and talk about Metal Gear Solid all day long. God of War. Now God of War for me was like Spyro the Dragon on steroids. You know, you walk around, you explore, but instead of using fire breath, you use these whips and chains to just tear monsters apart. I love God of War. Now the next console for me hits me right here, right in my heart. I spent a lot of years in hospital when I was a young man in my teens, or even earlier than that, like 9, 10, and this console was in the hospital and I played it days in and days out. And that is the Nintendo 64. First game, Super Mario 64. Loved that game. Exploring this 3D world for the first time as Mario, jumping into paintings and going to the different dimensions. It was amazing, and it still is. Next game, moment of silence. GoldenEye. Every first-person shooter that's ever come out is built on the foundation that 007 GoldenEye made. If you love first-person shooters, and if you weren't around for GoldenEye, you should respect the people that played GoldenEye, because that game is arguably... No, wait, I'm just going to say it. GoldenEye is the greatest first-person shooter ever made. Next, another game that everybody loves, The Legend of Zelda: The Ocarina of Time. Another time-traveling game with Zelda in it. You can't beat that, you really can't. Another great FPS, Perfect Dark. Now for me, Perfect Dark and 007 GoldenEye were very similar. The way you play it was similar, the mechanics were similar, the graphics were similar, but it doesn't quite reach the GoldenEye standard. Still a great game though. Donkey Kong 64, another great game. Not much to say about it. Get out and play it. Star Fox 64, everyone knows Star Fox, and if you don't, for shame. Pokemon Stadium, everyone plays Pokemon Go, but just for a second, sit back and play Pokemon Stadium. It's a different game, it's a different take, but it is so much fun. When it comes to role-playing games, you really can't beat Pokemon Stadium. WWF No Mercy, a great Nintendo 64 game, one of the greatest wrestling games I think ever made. Resident Evil 2, just as good as Resident Evil 1 on the PlayStation 1, but the story was even better. Bomberman, not many people talk about Bomberman anymore. Do you remember the boss battles in Bomberman? When the dragon would like fly under the bridge and you would drop the bomb at the perfect time, and if you got it correct, you'd blow it up and cause lots of damage? That was a great game. Mario Party 2, Mario Party 3, long before the Wii came out, Mario was having a party, and it was in the form of Mario Party 2 and 3. Last console, the GameCube. Remember the GameCube? Wow, what a funny looking console that was. Super Smash Brothers, a great game that everyone could play. Let off some steam, just beat the crap out of each other. Throw them off the map, it was a great game. Metroid Prime, another first-person shooter, and another good first-person shooter. Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door, one of the original Paper Mario games that was a completely unique art style, but still so much fun to play. Pikmin. Now, if you've never played Pikmin, don't take my word for it. YouTube, Pikmin 1 and Pikmin 2. The gameplay on that was outstanding. Final GameCube game, Pokemon Colosseum. Another great game in another great era in great gaming history. Now that's it. That's all the console games that I class as great vintage games. But I do have a few PC ones. The original Max Payne, Doom, Half-Life, and let's not forget Duke Nukem. So that's it, guys. They are, in my opinion, the top 40 greatest vintage games of all time. What do you think? Do you think differently? Comment below and tell me what you reckon. Now, I love doing this YouTube thing, and thank you all very much for watching. But please comment, please share, please subscribe, because this is the Judgment Zone, and I'm not going anywhere. So as always, thank you very much. I'm Phil Judges saying, it's judgment time!